CEO fired a single mother for helping a homeless man. That was the sentence whispered through the marble lobby like a gust of cold wind. At first, no one wanted to believe it. But there she was, Maya, clutching a small box of her things, her trembling hands giving away what her lips refused to show. The security guard beside her shifted uncomfortably, avoiding her eyes, while the glass doors ahead reflected her tear-streaked face like a mirror of humiliation. Outside, the world went on, phones ringing, elevators chiming, heels clicking on the polished floor. Inside, silence stretched between gasps and murmurs. People pretended to type, to look away, to stay invisible. But everyone saw, everyone knew. Vincent Greaves, the CEO, stood near the reception desk, tall, tailored, and terrifyingly calm. His eyes were cold steel behind his designer glasses. "We have a reputation to protect," he said quietly, his voice carrying through the air like frost. "You knew the policy." Maya didn't answer. Her throat had dried up long before her words could have mattered. She had spent years at that company. Years cleaning up messes, fixing schedules, helping interns survive their first breakdowns. And now, she was reduced to a rumor, a cautionary tale, a headline waiting to happen. Her coworkers stole glances as she walked past. One whispered, "She fed that man again." Another muttered, "Guess kindness has a cost here." Someone laughed nervously, a hollow sound that hurt worse than silence. The elevator doors slid open. She stepped in, gripping her small cardboard box like a lifeline, a coffee mug, a frame drawing from her son, a few pens. The doors closed with a soft hiss, cutting her off from the world she had built, the one that had just expelled her. Outside, the late afternoon sun burned bright against the glass facade of Greaves & Co., casting long, hard shadows. The same alley where she'd shared her lunch with the homeless man was only a few steps away, invisible from the inside, ignored by those too busy climbing. She had given him a sandwich, a smile, a few kind words. It had cost her everything. Vincent turned to his assistant. "Make sure HR deletes her access immediately. No statements, no explanations." His tone left no room for mercy. In his office upstairs, the skyline glittered, glass and money, towers and pride. He poured himself a drink, satisfied. To him, discipline was power, and power, he believed, made him untouchable. But down on the street, as Maya stepped into the cold air, something shifted. The homeless man, Elijah, looked up from where he sat beside the dumpster. His eyes softened when he saw her empty hands. "You okay, miss?" he asked gently, unaware of what had happened. She tried to smile. "I'm fine," she lied, her voice trembling. She placed her box on the ground and sat beside him for a moment. The world, so cruelly balanced above them, seemed suddenly meaningless. "They fired me," she whispered. "For what?" "For this," she said, breaking the sandwich she'd packed that morning in half. "For helping you." He blinked, stunned. "I'm sorry," he murmured, as though it were his fault. "Don't be." She forced a small smile. "You're the only person who's looked me in the eye all day." A gust of wind blew, scattering papers across the pavement. One of them, a memo she dropped, fluttered to the feet of a young intern watching from the glass doors. He picked it up, his jaw tightening. For the first time, someone inside saw not a rule broken, but a heart broken. As Maya walked away, her shoes clicking against the sidewalk, the reflection of the building shimmered behind her, a monument to greed, hollow and high. She didn't know it yet, but before the next sunrise, that reflection would crack. By morning, the world would know her name. The man who fired her would be defending himself on every screen in the country, and a single act of kindness, punished by power, would ignite a storm no empire could silence, because some stories don't end in offices. They begin on sidewalks, where hearts still remember how to care. Every morning, before the sun rose over the gray skyline, Maya was already awake, standing barefoot in a quiet kitchen lit only by the hum of the refrigerator. She moved gently, careful not to wake her son sleeping in the other room. The apartment was small, just 2 rooms and a narrow hallway, but it held their whole world. She poured water into a kettle and counted the tea bags, always down to the last few. Breakfast was modest, 1 egg, split between 2 slices of toast, but Maya always made sure Liam, her 7-year-old, had the larger half. "I'm not hungry anyway," she'd say with a smile that never quite reached her eyes. Liam believed her. He was still young enough to think moms didn't get hungry, that their strength came from somewhere else. Maya worked as an executive assistant at Greaves & Co., a high-gloss corporate firm where appearances mattered more than people. Her job was a dance, scheduling, filing, smoothing over tense conversations, managing egos, all while hiding the truth of her life outside the office. She was always early, always neat, always smiling. No one knew that her high heels were second-hand, the soles worn thin, or that her neatly ironed blouses came from donation bins and discount racks. She wore them with pride anyway, like armor. She kept a photograph of Liam taped inside her top drawer, his gap-toothed grin and crayon-scribbled "I love you." Mom gave her strength during long meetings and even longer silences. Her coworkers liked her, in that distant, office-friendly way. She brought in leftover cookies after birthdays, remembered names, and left thank you notes no one expected. She never gossiped. She never complained. She always said, "I'm okay," even when she wasn't, and yet, life was a quiet balancing act. Maya took the bus to work, walked the last 6 blocks to save fare. Most days, she skipped lunch, telling others she was just not that hungry, while the sandwich she'd brought was quietly tucked into her bag for later. For Elijah, the homeless man she passed on her walk home, he never asked for food. But Maya gave it anyway, her small act of defiance in a world that looked through him. At night, she'd collapse into bed next to Liam, reading him stories about dragons and brave knights, never telling him about late bills or empty fridges. "Tell me the one about the castle again," he'd say, and she'd laugh. In a lane not too far away, she'd begin, her voice soft. There was a mother and her little prince, and they had nothing but love, which turned out to be everything. Maya was tired, but not bitter, broke, but not broken. She believed, somehow, that things would turn, that goodness meant something, even if it wasn't rewarded yet. There were days she cried in the shower, muffling the sound so Liam wouldn't hear. Days when rejection emails made her question everything. But every morning, she stood up, dressed up, and showed up. That, she told herself, was enough. Once, a coworker left behind an untouched sandwich. Maya quietly wrapped it in a napkin and slipped it into her purse. No one noticed. No one ever did. But Maya noticed everyone. The receptionist's red eyes, the janitor's limp, the intern's shaking hands. She offered tissues, warm tea, words like blankets. She knew pain, and so she carried other people's too. Still, she never saw herself as heroic, just human. That's what made what happened next all the more cruel. Because when the weight of the world finally crashed down on her, not one of the people she had carried stepped forward to catch her. Greaves & Co. was the kind of place where everything gleamed, but nothing felt alive. The lobby was all glass and chrome, with a curated chill in the air that seemed to whisper, "Appearances matter." Every morning, the security guards nodded silently, scanning badges with the kind of detachment reserved for airport checkpoints. Behind the reception desk, a giant digital screen looped slick promos about the company's commitment to innovation, never once mentioning people. Inside, the office was a maze of frosted glass partitions and white noise machines. Every desk was uniform, spotless, monitored. Even the potted plants looked afraid to grow. Personal items were discouraged. No family photos. No knickknacks. No distractions. The message was clear. You were here to function, not to feel. Cameras blinked from the corners. Not hidden, they were meant to be seen. They stood like sentinels, reminding everyone that nothing went unnoticed. Trust wasn't part of the company culture. Control was. Management was an ever-rotating panel of tight-lipped supervisors, all clipped voices and dress codes. Smiles were strategic. Praise was rare. And the only feedback anyone got was "You're lucky to be here." The break room was no better. The refrigerator was a battleground of stolen yogurts and post-it notes that said, "Do not touch." Conversations were guarded, full of fake laughter and quiet status games. People didn't eat together so much as near each other, huddled over phones, scrolling through a better life somewhere else. And yet, Maya's presence felt like an anomaly in this vacuum. She brought light where there was none. She would refill the coffee pot without being asked, leave tea bags on the counter with a handwritten "Take one. You deserve it." She knew the janitor's name, Carlos, and asked about his daughter's graduation. People noticed her kindness, but not enough to remember it when it mattered. The world outside the office windows was a blur, distant, muffled, unimportant. But for Maya, the alley behind the building was not just a forgotten corner. It was where Elijah sat most days, on a flattened cardboard box beside the dumpster, wrapped in layers even in the summer heat. To others, He was part of the scenery, something to be ignored. Like a crack in the sidewalk, executives turned their heads. Interns avoided eye contact. Management referred to him as a security concern, but to Maya, he was real. A person. She'd seen him offer his blanket to another man once. She'd heard him sing old Motown under his breath. He reminded her that kindness didn't require a title or a paycheck, just a heartbeat. That alley became sacred in its own quiet way. It was the one place where Maya could give without rules, without judgment. A sandwich, a cup of tea, a moment of shared humanity. It was also the place where the company's cold eye eventually turned, misinterpreting compassion as a breach of protocol. In a building full of cameras and policies, they saw everything, except what truly mattered. It was a Tuesday, the kind of day that pretends to be ordinary. No rain, no headlines, no warnings. Maya had packed a turkey sandwich that morning, sliced in two, wrapped carefully in wax paper. She'd added an apple and a small thermos of coffee, sweetened just the way Elijah liked it, 2 sugars. No cream. She slipped out during her lunch break, her ID badge swinging around her neck as she headed down the side stairwell. Cameras lined the hallways, but she'd made the trip enough times to no longer feel self-conscious. To her, it was a simple act of care. Nothing more. Elijah was already waiting behind the dumpster, sitting with his back to the brick wall, sketching something with a worn pencil stub on a torn envelope. "I brought your favorite today," she said, smiling as she knelt to hand him the sandwich and coffee. "You spoil me," he replied with a gentle laugh. "They don't make 'em like you, Maya." She sat with him for a moment too long. Inside, somewhere on the 3rd floor, a red light blinked on the office monitor. A live feed from camera 17A displayed the alley behind the building. A sharp-eyed assistant manager noticed Maya's ID tag on the screen and hit record. Within minutes, the footage was forwarded up the chain, all the way to Vincent Greaves. Vincent didn't see a woman showing kindness. He saw liability. He saw branding risk. He saw headlines that hadn't been written yet, but might one day read, "Greaves & Co. Employees distribute food on company grounds." Firm silent on vagrancy concerns. That afternoon, he summoned his executive team to the 10th floor boardroom, a place where glass walls ensured nothing could be hidden, only observed. The entire operations division was called in. No agenda was sent. Maya, unsuspecting, walked in and took a seat at the end of the table. She straightened her blouse and tucked her hair behind her ears. She smiled at a colleague across from her, but the smile wasn't returned. Vincent entered like a storm dressed in a suit. Tall, rigid, clean-shaven. His presence alone demanded silence. "There is a video I'd like to share," he said, sliding a remote from his pocket. The flat screen behind him flickered to life. There she was, Maya, on screen, kneeling beside Elijah, handing him food and coffee, smiling like a human being. The silence in the room was suffocating. "This," Vincent began, voice like ice cracking underfoot, "is a violation of our company's code of conduct, a direct breach of our safety protocols." He turned to Maya, his eyes unforgiving. "Care to explain?" Maya opened her mouth, but no words came. She wasn't ashamed, just blindsided. She'd never imagined her compassion would be treated like contraband. "I was on my lunch break," she said softly. "I gave someone food. That's all, that's all." Vincent echoed, turning toward the room. "She says that's all. This isn't a soup kitchen. We are a brand. We are a standard. Employees do not engage in unsanctioned interactions with vagrants. Not in uniform. Not on company grounds. Not ever." The word vagrant stung more than she expected, like he'd scraped the dignity off a man's soul and replaced it with a label. "This isn't who we are," he continued, pacing. "And if anyone thinks this is acceptable behavior, you may join her on the sidewalk." A few people shifted in their seats. A few glanced at Maya. No one spoke. Vincent paused in front of her. "You are terminated effective immediately. HR will escort you out. Your badge is deactivated." Maya stared at him. "For feeding someone who was hungry. For compromising the company's image," he replied, cold and final. She looked around the table. No one met her eyes. The people she'd baked cookies for. The intern she'd mentored. The manager she'd covered for during his mother's surgery. All of them, heads down, silent. She stood slowly, heart pounding in her ears. As she left, her box already packed by someone else. The hallway seemed longer than usual. The walls tighter, the glass colder. She passed the same receptionist who once cried in the restroom and whom Mayo had consoled. That woman looked away now. Downstairs, the security guard walked her to the door. He didn't speak either, just opened the door, nodded, and turned back. Outside, the sun was dipping behind the skyline. The city bustled, oblivious. Her legs moved on their own, carrying her to the alley, where Elijah sat humming a soft tune. "Why so early?" he asked, surprised. "I don't work there anymore," she said. He blinked. "Because of me?" "No, because of him," she replied, the corners of her mouth barely holding the shape of a smile. The sandwich she'd brought was still warm. She handed it to him anyway. "You need it more than I do," she said. But inside her, something cracked. Not her kindness, but her faith in the system she'd trusted. She'd followed the rules, worked hard, given more than she had. And when it mattered most, no one had remembered who she was. What no one in that sterile boardroom knew, however, was that the cameras they trusted so deeply had recorded more than a rule violation. They'd captured a woman's humanity. And soon, the world would see it, too. The bus ride home felt endless. The city outside the window blurred into streaks of gray and gold, but Maya barely saw it. Her reflection in the glass looked unfamiliar. A woman hollowed out by disbelief. Her hands, still trembling, clutched the box of her things. Every bump in the road felt like a reminder that life was about to get harder in ways she hadn't planned for. By the time she reached her apartment building, dusk had painted the hallways in weary orange. The lights flickered overhead. Someone's TV murmured behind thin walls. She took a deep breath before unlocking her door, pressing the box against her chest like a shield. Inside, the smell of crayons and laundry greeted her, a fragile kind of home. "Mama." Liam ran up, his face lighting up. He was still in his school uniform, socks mismatched, hair sticking up at the back. "Hey, baby," she said softly, setting the box down and scooping him into her arms. The weight of him, the warmth, grounded her for a moment. "You're early," he said, smiling. "Did your boss give you a day off?" Maya hesitated. Her throat tightened. She couldn't tell him. "Not yet." "Something like that," she said, forcing a smile. "Thought I'd surprise you." He grinned, satisfied, and ran to the table where a paper castle stood, half-colored. "Look, I finished it. You said nights always need walls to protect people." She nodded, blinking back tears. "That's right, baby. You did amazing." As he went back to coloring, Maya slipped into the kitchen. The fridge door creaked as she opened it. Half a carton of milk, 2 eggs, a few apples softening with age. The silence that followed was heavy. She sat at the small table, staring at the blinking cursor on her cracked phone screen. Job sites, endless listings that all said the same thing. Experience required, immediate availability, background check mandatory. Her thumb scrolled down. Each click felt heavier. Rent was due in 12 days. The electricity bill lay unopened on the counter. She'd already stretched every paycheck until it snapped. She laid her head down on her arms. For the first time in months, the exhaustion reached her bones. Her mind replayed the day, the boardroom, the eyes that turned away. Vincent's words like shards of ice. "You're terminated," effective immediately. Terminated, like she was an error to delete. She closed her eyes, and tears finally slipped free. Quiet, desperate tears. The kind you don't sob out loud because the walls are thin and your child is in the next room. She bit her lip to keep from making a sound. Her thoughts turned dark and tangled. Why does kindness hurt so much to keep? Why does goodness feel like weakness in this world? She remembered Elijah's eyes when she told him, the guilt that flashed across his face. She didn't want him to feel that way, but she also didn't know how to feel anything else. She whispered to herself, "I did the right thing. I did the right thing," as if repeating it could make it true again. But her voice cracked. The kettle whistled faintly, a lonely sound in the quiet apartment. She poured herself a cup of tea, though she couldn't taste it. From the living room, Liam called out, "Mom, can we get pizza this weekend?" Her heart clenched. "We'll see, sweetheart," she answered, steadying her tone. Maybe next time. When he fell asleep later, curled up with his paper castle on the floor beside him, Maya sat on the couch and watched him breathe. The innocence on his face broke her all over again. She opened her laptop. The screen's blue light made her look ghostly. She typed night shift jobs, remote work, single mom assistance. Nothing seemed real. The world felt closed. 1,000 doors that wouldn't open no matter how gently she knocked. The clock ticked past midnight. The city outside went quiet, but inside her, noise raged. Fear, shame, anger, confusion. She thought about how hard she tried to live with dignity, to teach Liam that goodness mattered. And yet, today, goodness had been the reason she lost everything. As her tears dried, a numb calm settled over her. She whispered into the darkness, maybe kindness isn't enough anymore. But deep down, beneath all the fatigue and doubt, a small voice answered, faint, stubborn, but alive. It has to be. In the back corner of the boardroom, behind a laptop and a pair of two big glasses, sat Daniel, a junior analyst barely 6 months into the job. No one ever really noticed him, which is how he preferred it. He was quiet, observant, and had a habit of pressing record on his phone when meetings took sudden turns. That day, when Maya was fired, Daniel didn't plan to become a whistleblower. He just couldn't look away. He'd watched her kindness for months, how she greeted the cleaning staff by name, brought tissues to crying interns, left gentle notes for people having hard days. And now, she was being thrown out like trash for offering a sandwich and coffee to someone hungry. He sat still as Vincent's voice sliced through the room, cold and unrepentant. When Maya left, Daniel had stared down at the video on his phone, all 3 minutes and 22 seconds of it. The footage was grainy, but the message was crystal clear. A kind woman, a cruel dismissal, an indifferent crowd. He didn't think for long. That night, in his tiny apartment, Daniel stared at the screen with his finger hovering over the post button. He hesitated, heart pounding, breath shallow. He knew the risks, but something in him snapped, just like something had snapped in Maya. He added a caption. This single mom got fired for helping a homeless man. This is who we work for. He didn't tag the company, didn't add his name, just uploaded the clip and logged out. By morning, the storm had begun. The video, raw, unfiltered, and brutal in its simplicity, struck a nerve. Twitter caught fire. Single mom punished for kindness trended within hours. Instagram pages that normally posted recipes and quotes were now sharing Maya's story. TikTok creators stitched the clip with reactions full of disbelief and rage. People didn't just see a corporate decision, they saw themselves. They saw their own quiet suffering, their own bosses who confused control with leadership, their own moments of silence when they should have spoken. By 10 a.m., Maya's name was everywhere. Even though she hadn't spoken a single word publicly. Morning shows ran segments with headlines like, heartless or strategic, CEO under fire for firing employee over homeless gesture, kindness costs her job, but the internet has her back. Hashtags bloomed like wildflowers. Hashtag justice for Maya, #kindness is not Akrimi, #fired for feeding at first, Greaves and co. Ignored it. Vincent was used to headlines. He believed in riding the wave, letting it pass. But by lunchtime, their phones rang nonstop. Clients called, concerned. Emails flooded in. Even longtime investors began asking questions. Employees whispered in hallways, passing their phones between cubicles. Some had watched the video 10 times already. Others finally spoke aloud what they'd only thought in secret. He went too far. Daniel, watching it all unfold, felt a strange mix of guilt and relief. He hadn't told Maya. He didn't know how. But her truth was out now. Raw and undeniable. In her apartment, Maya didn't even know yet. Her phone was old, slow, and filled with messages she hadn't checked. She was making Liam breakfast, still pretending everything was normal. Her silence, in a way, had protected her from the noise, but not for long. By the time she opened her inbox, it had over 300 new messages. Her voicemail was full. The first news clip she saw made her drop the phone. There she was, on the screen, her trembling voice. The words, "You're terminated effective immediately." Her face flushed with shock. Panic rose in her throat. Who had done this? What would happen now? Would people judge her, pity her? But then she started reading the comments. This broke me. She's every single mom I know. I've been Maya. I just didn't get caught. She's not the villain. She's the reminder we all needed. Tell her we love her. Maya stared at the screen, tears forming. For the first time in days, she wasn't crying from fear. Back at Greaves and co. Chaos had finally reached Vincent's door. His assistant entered the boardroom, pale. The New York Times just called. They want a comment. Vincent leaned back in his leather chair, trying to maintain his composure. No comment. The assistant hesitated. Sir, Forbes is calling it a PR disaster. Our social mentions have gone up 700%. But it's all negative. There's a petition with 500,000 signatures demanding an apology and your resignation. His jaw clenched. They'll forget. They always forget. but they did and single quotes t. By that evening, Maya's face had become a symbol, not just of kindness punished, but of quiet workers everywhere who'd been discarded for choosing humanity over rules. She hadn't asked for attention. She hadn't spoken up, but now the world was speaking for her, and the company that tried to silence her, it was being dragged, headline by headline, into the kind of spotlight it could never control. ChatGPT said. By the second morning, the sidewalk outside Greaves & Co. no longer belonged to power suits and morning lattes. It belonged to cameras, microphones, and crowds with questions. Reporters packed the front steps like storm clouds, each trying to shout louder than the other. Is it true she was fired without severance? What's the official stance on feeding the homeless now? Does Vincent Greaves still stand by his decision? Inside, panic had begun to bloom. Employees moved through hallways like ghosts, eyes wide, voices hushed. What was once a culture of silence had turned into a powder keg of resentment. Slack threads buzzed with screenshots, old emails, hushed confessions, and then came the flood. Former employees, ones who had been laid off, overlooked, pushed out, began speaking up. On LinkedIn, on Twitter, on Reddit, one by one, they posted stories that echoed the same tone. This company has always cared more about optics than people. Maya's story, unique. It's just the one that finally made noise. The narrative had broken free from corporate control. It now lived in the voices of people who had long been unheard. Shareholders, once comfortably distant, began calling emergency meetings. Greaves & Co.'s stock dipped fast. A board meeting was called behind closed doors. No smiles, no small talk, just tension so thick it could snap. Vincent walked in, rigid and proud, but even he could feel the shift. His voice had always commanded the room, until now. We need to wait it out, he said. These people forget. It'll pass. One board member leaned forward. It's not passing. It's escalating. Another added, clients are pulling out. Advertisers too. And that petition, it hit 1 million signatures this morning. Vincent scoffed. It's just noise. No, said the CFO, quietly. It's your legacy. That afternoon, in a last-ditch effort to control the narrative, Vincent released a public statement. It was polished, robotic, a press release born of fear, not remorse. While we value compassion, all employees must follow protocol. We regret any misunderstanding caused. It backfired instantly. The internet tore it apart. Misunderstanding. One tweet read, she lost her job. He lost his humanity. Others shared side-by-side images. Maya giving a sandwich versus Vincent behind a podium, blank-eyed and brittle. By the end of the week, the board acted. Vincent Greaves was quietly forced to resign. No celebration followed. No applause. Just a quiet press notification and a closing door. The man who once ruled with icy precision had been melted by public heat. And then came the offer. An HR representative, a new face, a softer tone, reached out to Maya. We'd like to offer you your position back, she said gently. Same salary, even a promotion. The company is reevaluating its culture. Maya listened, polite but unreadable. She thanked them, said she'd think about it. The next day, she stood outside the same glass doors she'd once exited in shame. But this time, there were cameras waiting for her, not to expose, but to listen. She took a breath and stepped up to the microphones. I want to thank the people who stood up when I couldn't, she began. Her voice was calm, but firm. I didn't come here to reclaim a job. I came to reclaim the truth. Flashes lit up. Silence fell. I was punished for being kind, she continued. And for a long time, I thought maybe kindness had no place in the world anymore. But I see now, it does. Because kindness didn't just defend me. It exposed something broken. A murmur of agreement passed through the crowd. I didn't need a job back, she said, voice breaking slightly. I needed to know kindness still mattered. She stepped down without waiting for questions. There was nothing left to prove. Inside, the office that had once been sterile and invincible now felt hollow. People watched from behind glass, unsure of what they had supported, or ignored, or feared. But something had shifted, not just in Maya, but in the air around them all. Justice hadn't come from policy. It had come from truth, and the courage of 1,000 strangers who decided one woman's story deserved to be heard. The camera zoomed in on a quiet corner of the city. Not a boardroom, not a protest, just a man sitting on a park bench, holding a cup of coffee with both hands like it was something sacred. His clothes were worn but clean. His voice, when he spoke, was soft, but it carried the weight of something rare. Dignity. "My name's Elijah," he said, looking directly at the reporter. "And Maya didn't just feed me. She saw me, like, really saw me." The reporter blinked, surprised by the clarity in his voice. Elijah didn't fit the narrative most were used to. He wasn't broken, bitter, or dangerous. He was just human. "She never made it a big deal," he went on. "She never asked for anything back. Most people walk past me like I'm trash. She sat next to me like I mattered." The clip aired on a local channel and was posted online within the hour. By nightfall, it had been viewed over 2 million times. Comments flooded in. "This man's words broke me. Elijah deserves the world. Maya's kindness saved more than we know." The world had already seen the cruelty. Now, it saw the heart of the story. Not just the punishment, but the bond that had sparked it all. Among those watching was a woman named Carla, the owner of a small diner a few blocks from where Maya and Elijah used to meet. She'd seen them together before, always thought Maya was a sister or friend. That night, she made a call. 2 days later, Maya stood in front of the diner's red brick walls, looking up at the flickering neon sign, Carla's Comfort Kitchen. Carla greeted her with a wide smile and an apron in hand. "Heard you're pretty good with people," she said. "How do you feel about starting fresh?" Inside, Elijah was already sitting at the counter, sipping coffee. Maya laughed through a sudden wave of emotion. "You got here before me. Old habits," he grinned. "You still owe me a better sandwich." Carla offered both of them full-time positions. No suits, no cameras, no performative apologies. Just a warm kitchen, fair pay, and a place where kindness wasn't punished, it was required. On her first official day, Maya arrived early. She wore a clean white shirt, her hair tied back, her heart cautiously hopeful. In her hands, she held a carefully folded package wrapped in brown paper. After the first rush of breakfast orders, she stepped outside to where Elijah was stacking crates near the back door. "Hey," she said, handing him the bundle. He unwrapped it slowly, his rough hands brushing against soft fabric. It was a new winter coat. Thick, warm, dark blue, the exact color of the sky the night she'd lost her job. "I saw you shivering last week," she said quietly. "Figured you deserved something better." Elijah didn't speak right away. He just looked at her, eyes glassy. "No one's ever done something like this for me," he said. She smiled. "Now you can say someone has." He pulled the coat on, running his fingers over the seams. It fit perfectly. They stood together in the alley behind the diner, the same kind of alley where it all began. But this time, there were no cameras, no consequences, just a people who had refused to stop caring. The gesture was simple, but in a world that had once tried to bury both of them under indifference, it was everything. And though the headlines had moved on, that quiet act of warmth, a coat, a smile, a second chance, spoke louder than any viral clip ever could. The morning air was crisp, the kind that hinted at fall, but still carried the warmth of summer's end. Maya walked hand in hand with Liam, their footsteps falling into an easy rhythm on the cracked sidewalk. The sun peeked over the rooftops, casting golden light on the quiet neighborhood. A new day, unburdened by fear. Liam chattered about school, a science project, a joke his friend told. The smell of glue sticks in the art room. Maya listened, her smile easy now, her laugh real. For the first time in a long while, her shoulders weren't tight with worrying. The weight hadn't vanished, but it was no longer unbearable. They reached the school gate, and Liam turned to her, grinning. "You're picking me up today, right?" "Wouldn't miss it," she said, brushing his hair back. "And I might even bring cookies." He lit up like a lamp, the kind with chocolate chips, the only kind that counts. He hugged her tightly, then ran through the gate, his backpack bouncing behind him. Maya stood there a moment longer, watching him disappear into the sea of little feet and big dreams. As she turned to walk home, something in the air felt different. A neighbor across the street waved, the one who'd never spoken before. Another woman, walking her dog, offered a gentle smile. Small things. But Maya noticed at the corner, a coffee shop she used to pass every day had a new sign in the window. "Free coffee for anyone who needs it. No questions asked." She paused, heart swelling. Her story had rippled. Not just online, not just in headlines, but in hearts, in sidewalks, in doorways. People looked up more now, held doors open, asked each other, "Are you okay?" and really meant it. The wound from what happened still ached. There were nights when the shame crept in uninvited, when the memory of that boardroom flickered behind her eyes. But those moments came less often, and they no longer had the final word. What remained was the truth, quiet, uncheckable. One act of kindness can change everything, even if it costs you everything. And sometimes, when the world finally looks up, it gives something back. As Maya walked on, her coat wrapped around her like armor, she carried no bitterness, only grace, only a simple, steady hope that maybe, just maybe, more people would dare to be kind, because it wasn't just about her anymore. It never had been. ChatGPT said, "What would you have done in Maya's place? Would you have looked the other way? Stayed silent in that boardroom? Or risked everything to do what was right? Have you ever seen kindness punished? In the workplace, in school, maybe even in your own home?" Maya's story, in just hers, it belongs to every quiet heart that's been told compassion is weakness. To every person who's been pushed down for choosing empathy over ego. But look what happened when the world finally listened. One small act, one sandwich, one moment of care. It echoed louder than anyone could have imagined. If this story moved you, even just a little, share it. Remind the world that kindness matters, that it's not just a gesture, it's a stand, because in the end, it wasn't a headline or a hashtag that made a difference. It was one woman, one man, and one choice to care. And sometimes, that's all it takes. Somewhere, Maya stands quietly beneath a soft morning sky, watching her son laugh in the distance. No fanfare, no cameras, just a smile. And for once, it means everything.